Have you ever closed the front door and wondered what happens inside your pug's mind in that sudden quiet moment, when the little shadow that follows you everywhere can no longer keep up? With a compact body, warm fawn coat, black facial mask, deep forehead wrinkles, velvety folded ears, dark round eyes, and a tightly curled tail, the pug is built for close human companionship. That companionship matters because this breed was shaped to live near people, which means being left home alone is not a small event to the dog, even when the house looks perfectly calm. Many owners call the reaction clingy, spoiled, or dramatic, yet a pug's inner experience when left alone is usually better understood as attachment, habit, expectation, and emotional regulation all working together. The psychology often begins before you even leave, because dogs notice departure patterns long before the front door closes, and a pug can read routine changes with surprising speed and precision. Shoes by the door, keys in the hand, a bag lifted from the chair, or a slightly different walking pace through the hallway can all signal that separation may be approaching again. To you, those actions are just preparation, but to your pug they can feel like the opening lines of a familiar story, one that sometimes ends with the dog left behind. If past departures have been calm and predictable, those early cues may create only mild attention, but if departures often feel uncertain, the body may begin activating before you even touch the handle. That is why some pugs start following more closely the moment you dress to leave, moving from room to room with a sharper focus than the simple companionship shadowing seen at other times. In that early stage, the dog is not yet grieving the absence, it is reading possibility, checking your path, and trying to understand whether this will be a short separation or something longer. Your own emotional tone matters here too, because hurried, guilty, or overly intense departure rituals can make the event feel larger and more charged than it really needs to be. Then the door closes, and the psychology changes instantly, because what was anticipation becomes reality, and the pug is left with scent, memory, routine, and the fading sound of your exit. In the first seconds after you leave, many pugs orient strongly toward the door, listening, staring, or standing still, as if the body needs one last check that the separation truly happened. That doorway moment is often less about panic than about confirmation, because dogs naturally verify changes in social location before deciding what emotional state the new situation requires from them. Your scent remains in the room, on fabric, in the hallway, and on the floor, so for a short time the home still feels heavily connected to you even though your body is gone. That lingering scent can be comforting, which is one reason some pugs wait near the door, the sofa, or your usual chair instead of immediately wandering off into other parts of the home. Many dogs also expect return at first, because human departures and returns happen repeatedly in ordinary life, so the mind may treat the first minutes as waiting rather than true loss. A secure pug may pause, listen, move once or twice through familiar spots, and then settle into rest because the dog's history says absence is temporary and the house remains safe enough meanwhile. A less secure pug may struggle to settle, not because it is disobedient, but because the body has not yet organized the separation into something predictable and manageable. This is especially meaningful in a breed that is so people-oriented, because the pug does not simply notice your absence, it notices the sudden loss of its main social reference point. In many homes, the first place a pug rests alone is the departure zone, such as the front door, hallway edge, or nearby rug, where the dog can remain closest to the last place you were. After that, the dog often shifts toward scent-rich places, like your side of the sofa, your slippers, your bed edge, or the patch of floor where your routine usually keeps you longest. If the dog feels reasonably safe, this phase may become quiet waiting, where the body lies down but the ears remain available, and sleep stays lighter than it would when you are home. In that lighter rest, the pug is not fully off duty, because the mind is still partly holding space for your return even while the body conserves energy through the empty stretch of time. Some pugs will also watch windows, listen toward the hallway, or react to distant outside sounds more than usual, because when alone, the environment suddenly becomes socially important in a new way. If the dog vocalizes during this stage, the meaning can vary, because a bark or whine may be calling, checking, protesting uncertainty, or simply expressing emotional arousal that has nowhere else to go. The key question is whether the body can recover afterward, because a dog that vocalizes once and then settles is very different from a dog that spirals into repeated distress without relief. When the pug cannot recover, the house may become a loop of pacing between the door, window, sofa, and hallway, as though the dog is searching for an answer the environment cannot give. That loop often reveals a mind caught between waiting and coping, because the dog wants reunion, yet has no direct way to make reunion happen and must somehow carry that tension alone. In stronger distress, breathing may quicken, rest becomes shallow, and every little sound can feel important, making the entire home seem less like a safe resting place and more like a listening post. Some pugs cope by carrying or lying beside objects that smell strongly like their person, because scent can function as an emotional anchor when actual social contact is temporarily unavailable. Others cope better when given a meaningful legal activity, such as a chew or food toy, because focused mouthwork can organize the body and reduce how loudly absence echoes through the room. But that coping works best when it is prepared before the emotional wave rises too high, since a dog already overwhelmed may ignore even a normally beloved toy or food item. Predictability changes everything here, because when absences follow understandable patterns, the pug's mind has less work to do and spends less energy guessing what the separation means each time. Repeated calm departures and calm returns teach the dog that being alone is part of life, not a social disaster, and that the empty house does not mean abandonment in the canine sense.
And I'll be back soon, promise.
In contrast, dramatic goodbye rituals can accidentally inflate the emotional size of the moment, making the departure feel less ordinary and more like an event the dog should worry about deeply. That matters even more in pugs because this breed often tracks human mood with unusual sensitivity, so tension in your body can become tension in the dog before you are even gone. Once alone, the pug is not thinking in human sentences, but the emotional question underneath the behavior is often simple: where did my person go, and what am I supposed to do now? A secure dog eventually answers that question with rest, because the body decides the environment is still safe and the person's return belongs to the pattern of the day. An insecure dog cannot answer it so easily, and the body stays half awake, half searching, using attention itself like a thread to stay connected to a person who is no longer present. That is why healthy solitude often looks quiet and boring, with a little waiting, a little movement, and a lot of resting, rather than constant emotional noise inside the apartment. Distress, by contrast, looks sticky, because the dog cannot shift smoothly from alertness to coping, and the whole period alone becomes a struggle to reach a state of genuine internal ease. Boredom can exist too, of course, but boredom usually leads a dog toward self-entertainment, while separation distress pulls the body back toward reunion-focused behavior again and again. A bored pug may investigate objects, sniff around, or make up small activities, yet a deeply unsettled pug often keeps returning mentally and physically to the missing person instead. This difference matters because the emotional center changes the solution. A dog needing stimulation benefits from enrichment, while a dog needing security benefits from predictability, gradual alone time learning, and calmer attachment support. One gentle protective factor is a pre-departure routine the dog can understand, because routine turns uncertainty into sequence, and sequence helps an anxious mind feel that the world still makes sense. Another is appropriate activity before leaving, since a short, cool, sniff-rich walk or small play and brain session can make rest easier afterward without overstraining a breed that handles heat poorly. Physical comfort also matters for pugs, because brachycephalic dogs may settle better when the room is cool, the bed is positioned well, and the body does not have to fight discomfort while alone. Safe alone time support can also include access to a favored resting place, familiar scent objects, soft background sound, and legal chew activities that help the body stay organized in your absence. What rarely helps is punishment after the fact, because a pug cannot connect later anger to earlier loneliness in the simple moral way humans often imagine. Instead, punishment can make departures and reunions more emotionally confusing, which may increase the very insecurity that was already making the alone time harder to manage calmly. The most useful approach is gentle observation. When does the dog activate? How long until it settles? Where does it wait? And what helps the body move from alertness into actual rest? Those details tell you whether you are looking at normal social attachment, mild unease, boredom, or a more serious inability to cope with separation as it currently exists. The reassuring truth is that many pugs can learn solitude more comfortably when the process is built around small successful absences rather than long overwhelming ones. When the dog begins experiencing departure as predictable and survivable, the psychology slowly shifts from searching and waiting toward trusting, resting, and simply passing time until reunion happens naturally. That shift does not make the pug less loving, because wanting closeness is part of the breed's nature. It simply makes the dog less burdened by each moment you step outside the door. In a well-supported pug, alone time starts to look less like emotional emergency and more like a quiet interval between shared parts of the day, which is a much lighter thing to carry. Then the return home also changes, because reunion becomes warm but not frantic, and the dog no longer needs to spend the whole absence proving how difficult it felt. So the psychology of a pug left alone is not only sadness, and not only waiting, it is a moving blend of attachment, expectation, scent comfort, routine memory, and the search for safety without you. And perhaps that is the heart of it all. When a pug learns that your leaving still leads back to your return, being alone stops feeling like loss and starts feeling like trust stretched across time. Time feels different to a dog left alone, because a pug does not count hours the way humans do, but instead experiences absence through changing light, fading scent, body state, and repeated moments without reunion. In the beginning, the dog may still feel close to you through fresh traces in the room, yet as time passes, those traces become less immediate, and the emotional effort of waiting can grow heavier. This is why some pugs seem quiet at first but become more unsettled later, not because the dog suddenly changed personality, but because the body has spent longer carrying uncertainty without social relief. Others do the opposite, becoming more peaceful after the first difficult stretch, because once the nervous system stops expecting your instant return, the body finally chooses conservation instead of constant checking. In that quieter phase, many pugs sleep in short pieces rather than one deep rest, waking often to small hallway sounds, outdoor movement, or changes in light that might possibly mean you are back. Those little wake-ups matter because they show how even calm solitude can remain lighter and more interruptible than true relaxed sleep shared in the same room with a trusted person. A dog that can truly nap while alone is often telling you something important about trust, because deep sleep is one of the clearest signs that the body believes absence is temporary and survivable. A dog that only dozes lightly, by contrast, may still be coping acceptably, but the body is not yet fully convinced that it can surrender all monitoring responsibilities in your absence. Window watching can become part of that coping pattern too, especially in apartment homes, where the pug may sit near light and distant sound as if the outside world could deliver clues about your return. This does not always mean distress, because for some dogs the window is simply the most socially interesting place when alone, offering motion, sound, and the feeling that life is still happening nearby. But if window time is restless, repetitive, and hard to leave, the behavior may carry more emotional urgency, especially when paired with pacing, vocalizing, or a constant rechecking of the front door area. Some pugs also drink, chew, stretch, or reposition more than usual while alone, not because anything is medically wrong, but because the body keeps trying small acts of regulation to help time pass more smoothly. In emotionally easier solitude, these small acts are enough, and the dog drifts between rest, mild observation, and quiet waiting without getting trapped in one anxious loop. In harder solitude, the same room can start to feel too empty, and the dog may repeatedly revisit the spots that once felt comforting, as if searching the home for a stronger version of your presence. That repeated searching is one reason some pugs seem to patrol the apartment when left alone, moving from door to sofa to bedroom to hallway, not to guard the home, but to regulate absence through motion. The movement itself can become soothing in a limited way, because if the dog cannot reach you, it can at least keep moving through the places most associated with you. This is also where routine memory becomes powerful, since the pug may predict what usually happens at certain times of day and begin orienting toward expected return windows before any actual sound confirms them. If you usually come home after a familiar daily pattern, the dog's body may begin waking more fully as that time approaches, becoming more alert before the moment of reunion has arrived. In some dogs, that anticipation looks hopeful and organized, while in others it becomes a tense build-up where every small hallway sound feels like a possible answer and every wrong sound feels disappointing. The emotional difference again lies in recovery, because a dog who hears a false alarm and then relaxes again is in a healthier state than one who spirals upward each time the hope is interrupted. Another subtle part of the psychology is memory of past departures, because dogs learn not only that you leave, but also how each leaving usually feels in their body after the door closes. If that body memory is calm, your pug approaches solitude with more confidence, but if that memory is full of tension, the next departure can reactivate the old emotional pattern before the day has even begun. This is why improving alone time comfort is often about changing emotional memory, not simply enduring longer absences, because the dog needs new experiences that feel easier in the body, not just more repetition. Small successful separations rewrite expectation, and expectation shapes feeling long before the current absence becomes long enough to be difficult again. For some pugs, background sound helps because soft music, gentle voices, or ordinary home noise can make the apartment feel less socially hollow and reduce the sharpness of total silence. For others, silence is easier, which is why good support is individual and must be observed through the dog's actual settling pattern instead of copied blindly from another household. Lighting can matter too, because a familiar, steady room often feels easier to read than a home filled with sudden visual shifts, harsh shadows, or overstimulating exposure to outside movement all day. The same principle applies to space. Some pugs cope better with access to the whole home, while others relax more easily in one comfortable, predictable room that feels secure and easier to monitor. The best setup is the one that lowers searching and increases rest, because that tells you the dog's nervous system is no longer spending so much energy trying to solve your absence. One of the most hopeful signs is when a pug begins choosing rest over reunion-focused vigilance sooner, because that means trust is replacing uncertainty as the main emotional answer to being alone. Another hopeful sign is when the dog can be left with a chew, enjoy it, and then fall asleep nearby instead of continuing to carry the whole absence in a state of unfinished alertness.
I missed you too.
Over time, healthy alone time learning often makes the home feel less like the place where separation happens and more like the place where the dog safely waits until the social world reconnects. Then your return home also becomes easier on the dog's body, because reunion no longer has to repair a long emotional emergency, only to complete a predictable cycle the dog has learned to trust. You may still be greeted warmly, because a pug will almost always care deeply that you are back, yet the intensity becomes softer, more joyful, and less desperate when the alone time felt manageable. That softer reunion is not a loss of love, it is evidence that love no longer has to fight panic in the same moment. In many ways, this is the real goal, not teaching the pug to stop caring, but teaching the dog that caring and coping can exist together without the body falling apart in between. A dog that reaches that state is still wonderfully attached, still delighted by your return, and still deeply people-oriented, but no longer so burdened by each departure that the whole day revolves around it. This matters for welfare because rest, predictability, and emotional recovery shape daily life far more than a few visible minutes of greeting or crying ever could. The mind of a pug left alone is therefore not empty, but active in a small, intimate way, constantly balancing memory, scent, expectation, and self-soothing until your return becomes real again. When that balance is hard, the dog struggles, when that balance is supported, the dog waits, and when that balance is trusted, the dog can finally rest. The owner's role is to make that balance easier by creating departures that are calmer, absences that are more predictable, and returns that feel normal enough to keep the emotional cycle steady. Gentle independence practice, safe comfort, appropriate enrichment, and patient observation do not erase attachment, they simply give attachment a stronger, more flexible foundation to stand on. For a breed like the pug, that foundation is especially important, because such a social little dog will always value closeness, and learning solitude is less about toughness than about felt safety. Once safety grows, alone time stops feeling like something the dog must resist and becomes something the dog can move through, one nap, one chew, one waiting interval at a time. Then the apartment itself changes meaning, from the place where you disappear into the place where your scent, routine, and return still belong, even while you are temporarily gone. That transformation is quiet, but powerful, because it changes the dog's inner question from, why am I alone, to, this is the part where I wait, and then my person comes back. And when a pug understands that pattern in the body,
Hello,
not just in
sweetie.
repetition, the front door
I'm
loses some
home
of its
now,
emotional
it's
weight and
okay.
the room becomes easier to inhabit peacefully. This is why progress can look small from the outside, maybe less pacing, a deeper nap, fewer false alarms at the window, or a calmer greeting, yet those changes reveal a much larger shift underneath. They reveal that the dog is no longer spending all its emotional energy trying to undo the separation, but is beginning to live inside it without fear taking over every moment. In that sense, a pug alone at home is always carrying a relationship inside the quiet, and the healthier the relationship feels in absence, the easier that quiet becomes to bear. So when you think about your pug after the door closes, imagine not only sadness, but also waiting, listening, remembering, adjusting, and gradually learning that love can remain even when the room is empty. Because the deepest comfort for a dog left alone is this simple lesson, felt over time and proven by return after return: you may go, but you do come back.